You did it. You made it to the final lesson, and now is when the real work begins. This lecture is inside a working structure fire. Sounds of an actual battle between us and the dragon will stretch your ability to concentrate to their max. An ability to follow commands or hear cries for help during moments of chaos is essential, so do your best to maintain focus on Captain Dave's voice. It's about to get real, so make sure your ear grossness is cleared for this, your final lecture.
Alrighty, week 8, welcome. Where are we in the process up to this point? Up to now, you know what's legally required for a fire department to hire a firefighter, but what will it take to hire you? Let's walk through what's going to happen. Habits, consistent with consistent heroes, allow your eyes to open and your ears to hear the things people around you seem to miss. Sleep is the best word to describe your brothers and sisters who may someday need your help. You make a decision to stick with the routine that changes as you evolve. A regiment is practiced, refined, and enhanced with one goal in mind: qualify to become the desirable candidate. A job placement was anticipated when it was posted. You properly scouted your desired fire departments and studied their public statements. Reading through the posted minutes, you discovered their concerns for funding had eased after continued assistance from the bargaining unit. Forecasts showed promise, and employee references attested to an exceptional working environment. You identified what was needed and pointed your career arrow toward satisfying whatever void was anticipated. Then, you fell in love with the fire department. Minimum qualifications were met, then exceeded until you became desirable. You determined where you wanted to be and what was needed to get there. A path was selected that brought out the best in you. Choosing the easiest and minimalist was not satisfying to you. Your goal was to be the best hero you could. No corners cut. This took time, but was worth your efforts. Next, the job application was submitted on time, accurately, and complete. Since you followed what was required and then some, there was no reason for being excluded from the testing process. Expectations were managed and problems averted when you foresaw failure. Meaning, you figured what you could get your application denied and managed to avoid those hazards. Instead of fingers crossed, you pre-planned and crossed only T's. You asked yourself, what would it take to deny my right to test? Then you worked to prevent the answers from becoming obvious. I have the minimum qualifications and more, but my work has only begun. Next, testing excellence was shown by your position on a crowded list of peers. Practice exam after practice exam helped you pinpoint areas of academic insufficiency. Granted, the boredom from self-teaching geometric volume calculations and determining gearing ratios was an occupational hazard in of itself, you persevered thanks to healthy hero habits, after which you scored tops on the statewide list. When asked, you opened your mouth and said the right things. Answers were sculpted with the receiver's filter in mind, thus taking you from the mediocre up to the desired. Your physical abilities were proven effortlessly. When directed to do so, you showed all the skeptics you were physically able to perform the essential tasks. This included carrying, pushing, and pulling heavy weights while being weighted down. They wanted to strain, fatigue, and pressure the weak out of the process, but you gave them no cause for alarm. Up to now, a passing grade was all you needed. And of course, the truth. All questions asked of you were honestly answered as only you can answer, meaning you eased fear and became likable. Before the test, you practiced well thought out and individualized responses. Their concerns were addressed by your answers and not rehearsed canned remarks like everybody else. During each interview, you maintained poise and respect, but most of all, humility. Beating other scores allowed you to rank high enough on the list to be reachable for any hiring agency. Due to your vigilance and consistent adherence towards self-improvement, evaluators saw in you what they're looking for. and began figuring you would fit in well. You became a model of the ideal candidate by constantly tuning your career arrow closer and closer to the trade, while others sat in the stagnancy of mediocrity. Employers scouting for ideal candidates quickly picked you out of the group and passed on their hiring marks to test administrators. Since your name was on the top rankings, along with several positive evaluators' endorsements, it made the chief's decision on whom to hire easy. Conditional job offer. And what? One day, you receive a call from a hiring officer at a fire department you've been tested at. The officer notifies you of your ranking on the list. She further states your subsequent interview awesomeness impressed the chief so much the job is yours for the taking. What a fantastic feeling to be offered the chance to serve as a 911 responder and make a career out of it. There's no better sense of accomplishment than rising above a group and being rewarded for all your hard work. Now it is time to get scared. If you accept the job offer, and there are certainly strings attached, these strings constitute a conditional job offer.
We interrupt this structure fire for a special reminder from one of the finest firefighters to have ever walked the earth. Listen to this special guest remind young firefighters what is important and how to avoid disaster on the fireground.
Probably, let me say, started as a firefighter because I worked in the street for front end 20 years of my career. And if you do that, I think what you see smoke up close and personal, and you see pretty quickly. Just forget being a firefighter, you're a human being. Smoke sucks. And so what you get indoctrinated to that, just as sort of the baseline understanding and sort of attitude that you have about it, because particularly if you're talking about becoming a firefighter in 1958, we used to breathe smoke. I mean, in those days, if you can kind of imagine prehistoric times. As I went through the system and got promoted in the system, you obviously had more responsibility. And that responsibility, the most daunting part of it, is the responsibility for the welfare of the firefighters. Well, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that a boss in our business ought to have a zero tolerance for breathing smoke. It's just that simple. And that's pretty much what we said probably, 30 years ago, was members of the Phoenix Fire Department are not allowed to breathe smoke. Any time, any place, any situation, simply don't breathe smoke. So we developed a set of sort of organizational dynamics that supported that. In other words, there was indeed a zero tolerance for a smoke inhalation injury. We had self-contained breathing apparatus. People were trained in it. We had adequate resources to use that. We had the understanding of the equipment. The only challenge was, would we enforce the SCBA rules that we had in place? We didn't need to, and I think this is probably the case today, Kaz. I don't think we need to write a whole lot more rules. We just need to enforce the ones that we have. Yeah. So that's basically what we did. It was pretty simple, and it got in this. It was just as simple in the beginning of that change as that it was easier to put on your mask than to deal with me. And you would hear firefighters say, the little bastard isn't going away, so it's just easier to wear your mask and you don't have to go through all those acrobatics that you do because we used to say it. We didn't do it very much, honestly, as we said that if you're overcome by smoke, we will enter, search, we'll find you, we'll extricate you, we'll treat you, we'll transport you, we'll visit you in the hospital, and then we'll suspend you. And so we got that message kind of punctuated. We didn't want to suspend anybody. That's a dumb way to enforce rules. But I think it was perhaps a little bit of street theater that showed that we were serious about just simply we were going to protect ourselves from smoke. It wasn't much more complicated than that. What Southwest did for us is it showed how many other major issues impact the business end of running out of air. In other words, there's the whole incident command process, there's strategy management. We discovered very quickly that we did not have an offensive firefighting plan for a commercial building, and neither did any other fire department in North America, because we dealt with just about every one of them. We had never talked about distances of penetration as far as attack operations are concerned. We never talked about hardening interior areas so that we could get in and out of them in a sensible kind of way. But the business end of it was that those firefighters ran out of smoke. They had maydays. They were out of air. They're going to address those maydays, and there was an incredible number of maydays in the middle of the beginning of that culminated in Tarver. Tarver was the fatality in it. There were a couple of very serious smoke inhalation injuries. I mean, guys that were probably close to being clinically dead. Tarver was biologically dead in the process. He was cemetery dead based on it. But it wasn't just. I don't know that we learned a whole lot about SCBA use in the process, but I think that we saw all the surrounding issues, not to make it any more complicated than it needs to be, the surrounding issues that support an SCBA policy, and then a practice that was effective. There's a lot of other issues and pieces and parts of that system that impact the way that we use air and manage air. And I think that was really kind of what, and certainly not to take anything away from how critical it was at the business end of running out of air. I mean, that was really the cause of him being a fatal in the process. But it was really an enormously kind of a broad education that we got that afternoon. And I think the whole North American Fire Service did too. It was one of the most educational fires, I think, in sort of the history of us really studying our experiences to try to keep bad stuff from happening. No, I think, we had done Save Our Own training like most major fire departments. Most of the fire service had done it in those days. There wasn't anything new in the process. We had done it under ideal conditions. What Southwest Supermarket was the most horrible, awful, reprehensible place to operate tactically that you could imagine. It was inside, it was congested, it had 2 feet of water on it, it had fire debris that had come from the attic. The distances were significant. They were doing it within the context of the products of combustion. It was the worst case to try to do a physical rescue out of a fire area. I think that was probably one of the really dramatic lessons for us. Is you got to train where you're going to operate, and that's what we started to do in the training after that, where we leased the commercial buildings and congested them, and we saw that those conditions would outperform the systems that we had in place at that time. And that was really kind of the big lesson.
Background investigation. In assuring you're ethical enough for becoming a firefighter, agencies often deploy someone to search your past. This investigator is looking for if you've engaged in conduct unbecoming of a firefighter. This could mean all trolling done on social media, hate spread to irritate the masses, dick pics, drunk pole dances, all of that stuff should be atoned for. Own it, say sorry, then move on and delete if possible. All, if regrettable, must forever remain the old you. Redemption may come, but don't continue with the errors. If you remember anything, uploaded stays online and is also out of your control, you'll think twice about your next post. The investigator may also contact previous employers or acquaintances for character testimony. This gives credence or validity to the phrase, make no enemies. Okay, this is the biggie. The last thing is passing probation or academy. Study the fine print of the job announcement and description to learn how long probation and or the academy time is. An 8-week academy commands you to be at a designated location for a prescribed amount of time under the watchful eyes of drill instructors and evaluators. You'll be subjected to drills and coursework that are intense both physically and mentally. Few academies are easy, mainly because it's an easy way to wash out the week. Make your focus be preparation for the role. Nothing more is needed except sweat and tears. Let them teach you, and the tower is smoother to scale. Whether your first assignment is in a medic unit, academy, or on an engine, remember, you are always being judged. Are you faking being a nice person when deep down inside you're a natural-born hater? Perform the work required within, and the rest falls into place. Besides, Since their eyes are scanning for anyone who can disrupt, your best habit is to seek harmony. Become a loving contributor towards a global family, and somehow the system takes care of you. For your part, even if in small amounts, work to make each minute count. Don't squander these precious opportunities by sinking into a sleepy and mediocre life. Make this existence a worthwhile venture by serving our sisters and brothers while smiling in the mirror. Now is your time to act. Act. With love, your bro, Captain Dave.